Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a very informative, terrifying, and somewhat unheard of very often upload to share with you. Before we get into that, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below, minus my merch, which is posted directly below this video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Now, I've only been doing my channel since 2018. Prior to that, I had researched a lot on Sasquatch, very little on Dogman. I was pretty content with what I learned on the internet about the Dogman after I had my encounter. Now, throughout the last 3 years, we have had very little compared to very little hyena-like dogman compared to the atypical dogman, or even the dogman without the tail, the werewolf, or whatever you want to call that one. Now, to me, the hyena-like dogman is terrifying because I know what hyenas are and what they can do in the wild. A lot of people think they are a scavenger, a scourge, a disgusting animal. I think they're beautiful. I think they're absolutely a marvelous predator. They are a killing machine. With that being said, a lot of African countries have had encounters with the hyena-like dogman. I'd like to share some stuff with you right now that I find fascinating, and I hope you do as well. Now, before we get into this, I think we should kind of understand what a hyena is. A lot of people consider a hyena almost like a dog, which is probably the furthest thing from the truth, and you will see why. Hyenas are a feliform carnivore mammal of the family Hyenidae, with only 4 species. It's the 5th smallest biological family in the Carnivora and one of the smallest in the class of the mammal. Despite its low diversity, hyenas are unique and vital components of most African ecosystems. So, phylogenetically closer to feline and the viverids, as a part of the suborder Feliforma, hyenas are behaviorally and morphologically similar to canine in several elements due to a convergent evolution. Both hyenas and canines are non-arboreal and cursoral hunters that catch prey with their teeth rather than claws. Both eat quickly and may store it. And their calloused feet, with large, blunt, non-retractable claws, are adapted for running and making sharp turns. However, hyenas' grooming, scent marking, defecation habits, mating, and parent behavior are consistent with the behavior of other feliformin. Hyenas feature prominently in the folklore and mythology of human cultures that live alongside them, hyenas are commonly viewed as frightening and worthy of contempt. In some cultures, hyenas are thought to influence people's spirits, rob graves, steal livestock and children. Other cultures associate them with witchcraft, using their body parts in traditional African medicine. Now, Feliforma is a suborder in the carnivore consisting of cat-like carnivores, including cats, hyenas, mongoose. Feliforma stands in contrast to the other suborder of the Caeniforma, which is dog-like, which then includes dogs, bear, wolves, fox, raccoons. And yes, oddly enough, seals and walrus and sea lions are in the Caeniforma species, as strange as that sounds. In the village of Atuga, Ethiopia, on any given night in late October, local farmers make sure to return from tending their livestock well before the sun sets. Markets close up and mother beckons their children home from play, one distinct note of urgency in their voices. "Were you playing by the blacksmith's house?" a mother might ask as she ushers her children indoors. "You know you are to stay away from him." The children nod their heads. Though it's about 2.5 miles from the nearest town, Atuga might as well be its own province. It isn't just silent after dark. With fewer than 200 residents, the hamlet melts into the countryside, an accessory to the landscape rather than an urban force imposing its will. From the safety of their homes, the residents can hear the sounds of the East African highlands, the steady buzz of insects, chirps, and nightjars, and every so often the high-pitched yip of the hyena, almost passable as a human mirth. Rattled by the sound, mothers tuck their children into bed each night with a warning that the were-hyena transforms at night, and they have a taste for children. According to legend, were-hyenas have long plagued places like Atuga, around the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan. Kids who wander away after dark are at risk. Strangers passing through town are subject to suspicion. The sound that you could swear was a human voice calling your name from the distance. Were-hyena. Like their folkloric werewolf cousins, were-hyenas can be either human-born or hyena, disguising themselves as humans. Also, unlike werewolves, were-hyenas are believed to be capable of transforming at will with the help of a magic stick or sprinkling of ash. Sometimes the smell of human flesh alone could be enough to trigger a transformation. In one sense, the origins of the were-hyena legend makes perfect sense. Hyenas and humans have had a consistent and adversarial relationship that dates back to the earliest human presence in Africa. For millennia, the nocturnal creatures have been known to converge in crackles at night, breaking into village huts, killing children, ravaging livestock. As Marcus Baines Rock, who studies human-animal relationships as a research fellow at the University of Notre Dame, puts it, these days humans tend to see themselves as in total control of their environment. But in Africa, a hyena attack is not a freak accident. It's an unfortunate fact of life. There's some acceptance that we are not the apex predator. As a result, unsurprisingly, were-hyenas became African proxy for all manner of dangers lurking beyond human settlements. Like their hyena cousins, they are solitary, but also known to hunt in groups, strong with an insatiable appetite and a reputation for luring people from the safety of their home. Mothers use the myth of a were-hyena to reinforce the risks of the things known to be dangerous, such as wandering off at night, in addition to the unknown. Where were-hyena folklore takes a surprising turn is in the exact other that they came to represent. Known as scavengers, inaccurately, since hyenas acquire much of their food from hunting as well. The animals weren't just seen as antagonistic, but cowardly and repulsive. One early myth originating from the Ivory Coast describes how a hyena attempted to convince all other animals to kill the first man and woman in existence. Fortunately, Dog warns our ancestors, foiling Hyena's plot and saving humanity. Similarly, were-hyena mythology centers the idea that they aren't just a threat, but a lowly, vile one. In some religions, this evolved into the means of further isolating othered populations. In Ethiopian folklore, for example, were-hyenas are referred to as boda, a term synonymous with the evil eye. In Amharara tradition, this notation dates back to creation. As a legend goes, Eve was the mother of 30 children, and one day God asked her to show them to him. Suspicious of his intentions, Eve hid 15 of her children, and when he discovered her disobedience, he cursed the children to be boda as punishment. Over time, the term became synonymous with the lower, uneducated artisan class, blacksmith in particular. For a time, all blacksmiths in Ethiopian culture were believed to be boda, capable of wielding the power of the evil eye to transform into were-hyenas at will. Belief in boda continues today and is fairly widespread throughout Ethiopia, as well as a lesser degree in Sudan, Tanzania, and Morocco. Blacksmithing was a profession traditionally dominated by the Jews of Ethiopia, and a tiny minority in the country whose presence there dates back to antiquity, also known as the Beta Israel, and believed to be descended from the tribe of Dan, who had fled the civil war in the kingdom of Israel between Solomon's son and Nebat's son. The Jews of Ethiopia were not allowed to own land or attend most schools. This left them professions such as blacksmithing, an inherited trade that required no formal education. Don Seaman, a scholar of religion and Jewish study at Emory University, believes that labeling the Jewish population of Ethiopia as boda was a form of ideological segregation, largely by drawing associations between boda and craft, creating a seamless mythic association and inhibiting the social mobility that may have been possible in previous eras, further dehumanizing them. Legend had it that the Jewish shapeshifters would rob tombs at night in hyena form, defiling bones and consuming any human flesh that remained. A lingering smell of rotten flesh was believed to be the best way to identify a were-hyena once it had transformed back into human. Were-hyenas' ties to the Jews of Ethiopia is mostly a thing of past. Most Ethiopian Jews were either forced to convert to Christianity in the 19th and early 20th century or emigrated to Israel in a series of operations orchestrated by the Israel government in 1980. Elsewhere in Africa, the were-hyena takes on a slightly different property as well. In Somalia, it transformed by rubbing itself with a magic stick at sundown. The Sudanese version is more violent and known for attacking lovers after dark. In Morocco, all were-hyenas are believed to transform every night after sunset and return to human form at dawn. All these myths share a common thread, a fear of the other and of nature's ability to disrupt life for those who do not respect her power. Belief in were-hyenas is still fairly widespread today in the rural Horn of Africa, particularly in villages like Atuga, where the threat and promise of wilderness still governs everyday life. Their mothers still send their children to bed with the tale about the were-hyenas, assuring them that if they heed the warnings, beastly crackling won't be the last sound that they hear. Beastly crackling. Now, that kind of phrase reminds me of when a dogman is on all fours and you hear the joints pop. Maybe that is what the people are hearing over in Africa. All I know is that any encounter that I've heard with the hyena-like dogman is terrifying. They're so aggressive and dangerous. According to hyena expert Dr. Hans Kruk, man-eating spotted hyenas tend to be very large specimen. A pair of man-eating hyenas responsible for killing 27 people in Malji in Malawi in 1962 were weighed at 72 kilograms or 159 pounds and 77 kilograms or 170 pounds after being shot. The rampaging beast in Dawa district, some 100 kilometers from the capital Lilongwe, was sent at least 4,000 people fleeing 4 villages to seek refuge at a community hall at the district headquarters. Park and Wildlife Officer Leonard Sifu said his department believed the mysterious beast could be a rabid hyena, but said it was strange for a hyena to terrorize whole villages without being cornered. He said his department was examining the maimed people to establish what the animal could be. Dr. Mattis Joshua, the Dawa District Health Officer, stated on a Wednesday afternoon that 2 old women and a 3-year-old child died when a beast crushed their skull and ate their intestines and private parts. All efforts to shoot and kill the animal has so far failed. Dr. Joshua said the 16 victims admitted to the hospital following the latest attack sustained various appalling injuries, with some of them completely maimed and disfigured. He said some of them lost both legs, hands, while 2 had lost both ears and eyes to the beast. 1 woman lost her mouth and nose. District Commissioner Charles Kalemba said the district administration is currently feeding the homeless people, but more resources are needed after rural district is unable to cope with the unexpected number of displaced. In August of last year, a mysterious beast killed 5 people and maimed over 20 others before game rangers and paramilitary police managed to gun it down. Parks and wildlife officials identified the slain beast as a rabid hyena, but residents dispute this, saying hyenas normally have shorter hind limbs. Residents who came close to the current beast, like 30-year-old Morgan Amoni, currently at the Lilongwe Central Hospital looking after his dad, one of the 2 victims referred to that hospital, believes the beast is not natural. He said he believes that it is the same beast that was shot dead last year and has resurrected to seek revenge on the people. In 2003, at least 3 people were killed by an unidentified animal in the remote area of Malawi. 16 others badly injured. While officials believe the animal to be a rabid hyena, both eyewitness accounts and expert analysis have thrown that theory into question. Attacks on villagers in Dawa district are thought to have begun in March of 2003, while Dawa is around 60 miles from the capital city of Lingawi. Many areas are sparsely populated and mountainous. Officials from the Parks and Wildlife Department first received word of the attacks from the villagers fleeing their home to seek refuge at a community hall in the district headquarters. In total, more than 4,000 people fled from 4 mountain villages. They brought with them stories of large, aggressive animals that were actively hunting people in the region. 2 elderly women and a toddler had been killed by the creature. In each case, their skulls crushed and both their intestines and genitals consumed. Many of the 16 people that had survived attacks had extremely severe injuries, including missing legs and hands. At least 1 woman's face was partially torn off, while 2 others were blinded. This was the 2nd time in less than a year that an aggressive, unidentified animal terrorized this district, with attacks the previous August resulting in 5 deaths and 20 maimings. On that occasion, the animal was eventually killed by a joint patrol of game rangers and paramilitary, while officials identified it as a hyena. Some witnesses disputed this, stating that it did not possess the underdeveloped back limbs that gave spotted hyena their characteristic gait and sloping back. Some villagers believed that the nature of the attacks, often badly maiming victims but leaving them alive, did not resemble those of a predator. Instead, they felt the attacks demonstrated a level of deliberate malice. Investigation into 2003 attacks, park officials concluded that they were likely again the work of a hyena. However, in this case, the animal was never captured or killed, and animal experts have questioned the likelihood of a lone hyena aggressively attacking entire villages of people. One witness, the son of a man hospitalized by the animal, stated his belief that the creature was supernatural in nature, the same animal that had been killed a year earlier to exact revenge. After fleeing their homes, many of the villagers returned home under armed guards, despite an intensive hunt by park rangers, supported by police officers and soldiers. The creature or animal responsible for the attacks was never found. You know, a person who lives at the edge of town has a reputation of magic. They provide a great service, plying their trade as a blacksmith. But everyone knew they could provide other services well for the right price. They could heal, even afflictions that shouldn't be possible to cure. They could cure. But none of that superstition was why you are making your way toward their home at the edge of the village. Your reason was more mundane. They did fine work with iron, and you needed a smith, repairs to be made. You'd never seen them cure or curse, but you knew the stories, same as anyone. The story that they could wield a magical staff and become a monster. You just assumed those stories are fiction, fantasy. You knew that they were, had to believe that they were. The creatures I speak of today have many names. In the folklore of North Africa, the Horn of Africa, and Near East, a creature stalks the night in hybrid form, one part human, one part monster. Kori, Ismaris, Boda, Boltungan. These are some of their names, but under one neoglism, they are were-hyenas. The stories of were-hyenas fill the folklore of cultures across Africa, and they are generally considered witches or wizards who wield magic to transform themselves into a monstrous hyena form. These stories are grounded in the belief that hyenas are vampiric creatures that attack people at night and suck their blood. That hyenas are able to mesmerize people with their eyes. It's no wonder, given the beliefs about hyena date back to the early 1300s, that were-hyenas were spoken of and feared. Hyenas are scavengers and predators. They have long been perceived as dangerous and their capabilities far-reaching. They filled stories and bestiaries with all manner of fiction, right alongside of fact. Were so feared that it only makes sense that folklore would develop surrounding them, and so the monstrous were-hyena was born. Unlike the European werewolf, which is usually portrayed as originally human, many stories of were-hyenas suggest that the creatures are actually hyenas that can disguise themselves as humans. So today, we'll look at those traditions. When you arrive at a small building, you hear ringing metal. The blacksmith is hard at work behind their home. You round the home slowly, inconspicuously perhaps, slowly down to move carefully around the building. There at the forge, with an assistant pumping the bellows, you see the blacksmith. The smith's hammer away at the anvil, making something, a magic of its own way. You approach him, raising a hand in greeting. The smith does not pause, only simply glances up at you briefly. The smith gets right to business, asking what you need and nodding at your request. Easily done, come back in 3 days. You nod, simply as that. You turn to go when the smith asks again. You should hurry home. Dangerous creatures come out at night. You don't hesitate. You rush homeward, but you will not reach it in time. You hear the barking sounds before sun even sets. The hyenas are out and about. Their time is nighttime, and it is upon you. You can see their flittering shadows atop of nearby hills, a pack of creatures about. You hear something else, something other, a yelping howl, much deeper, much deeper. A hyena yelps in pain, losing a terrible howl. On a hilltop where a pack had been closing in, something else, something of magic. The Kori Ismaris, translated as one who rubs himself with a stick, is from the stories of Somalia. Kori Ismaris is traditionally a man who can transform himself into a monstrous hyena man by rubbing himself with a magic stick. This transformation usually took place at night, during which the Kori Ismaris would roam in its form before repeating the process before dawn to return to his human state. Kori Ismaris appears in a number of Somalian myth and stories. The stories generally serve as a purpose to teach lessons and scare children, as the figure is not only a shapeshifter, but a deceitful trickster as well, dangerous to all who encounter. He serves alongside a number of giants, spirits, and other creatures as sort of a boogeyman in the Somalian myth. In Ethiopian stories, blacksmith feature in lore of the were-hyena and magic. The blacksmith trade is passed down both to men and women, crafting and making all objects that the community uses, passed down through family. They hold the great responsibility of making for their community. Ironwork is believed to require a vast amount of supernatural power, and thus blacksmiths were held to possess and wield this power. Sometimes this reputation and belief is elevated blacksmiths. They and their profession are viewed with a sense of awe and power that allows them to easily become leaders in their community. Unfortunately, this reputation does not always cast a good light on them. When they are not viewed with awe, they are instead seen with suspicion, and many stories recount them robbing graves at midnight in their hyena form. Blacksmiths with these magical abilities are known as boda, and this belief is held in parts of Ethiopia, Sudan, Tanzania, and Morocco. The creature was far larger than any ordinary hyena, standing on two legs as well. It loosed a yipping howl. When it ran, it did so on four legs, throwing itself across the ground at the speed that far surpassed its natural brethren. You were still far from home, too far, closer to run back to the blacksmith, so you turn, and you run. Yipping and panting as it runs a few times, peering over your shoulder, you can see it dashing across the hilltops, occasionally vanishing out of sight. Then suddenly you can see light, a pool of it flickering the cast from the shadow of the blacksmith's house. You breathe aches and burns as you run, but at the end is a sight. Then the creature is upon you. It dives out of the shadows nearby and leaps your way. You only avoid it by throwing yourself to the ground. You stumble back to your feet and keep moving, the creature spinning around and dives again. Then you are in a pool of light, and the creature pulls up short. It refuses to enter the light, and a moment later the door to the house opens. The blacksmith emerges. Well, come on in then. It won't trouble you here. You spend the night in a small home of the blacksmith, and in the safety of the morning's light you travel home. The lore of the were-hyena is not limited to Boda and the Kori Ismaris. However, many more stories are spoken and shared across many regions. In the Kanuri language, in the area surrounding Lake Chad, were-hyenas are referred to as the Boltungan, which translates to, I change myself into hyena. There are several villages that were believed to be populated entirely by were-hyenas in this region. In the western Sudan, stories speak of hybrid hyena-human creatures that transform each night into a cannibalistic creature that hunts and terrorizes people and young lovers. The creatures were usually portrayed when in their human form as woodcutters or smiths and powerful healers. They were recognizable in their human form through several physical signs, generally particularly hairy bodies, eyes that gleamed red in the darkness, and a nasally voice. Alongside with many stories of the were-hyena, it makes sense that many legends would persist about hyenas themselves. In 1406, Al-Dumari wrote about hyenas in his Hawan al-Kubara. He wrote that hyenas were vampiric creatures that attack people and suck blood. They were claimed to be able to hypnotize and mesmerize people with their eyes through other means. It was suggested that they may even use pheromones to control their victims. For many years, it was also believed by the Greeks that the body of a werewolf, if left unattended, would return to life as a hyena and would haunt battlefields to drink blood from the bodies of dying soldiers. There are members of certain groups, such as the Kur in the Malawi, that imitate the behavior of hyena through mask and plays. They do this to evoke the revealed behaviors of hyenas and to teach them to avoid those behaviors in their own lives. Were hyenas represent certain primal behaviors. They are hungry and dangerous. They have powerful magic. And while they may hunt and curse and harm, they may also heal and make and protect. They are used as boogeymen to scare and teach children. And they are used to represent leaders who wield magical powers and lead with wisdom. They operate in duality, as seems right for a shapeshifter, as they are both merciful and vicious, healer and destroyer. It only makes sense that they would bear two forms. Eating hyena spread fear in Malawi. A 5-year-old boy is among a half a dozen people who have been killed by hyenas in Malawi since Christmas. The attacks have spread fear among local population around the city of Blantyre, Malawi's commercial center. The government has sent rangers to the area to track down the animals, whose aggressive behavior has puzzled wildlife experts. It is very rare for hyenas to attack people. Goats and chickens are their normal prey. The government is taking action and is bringing in rangers to try to track down the hyenas and kill them. Anthony Lavuza, director of information for the Malawi government, told the BBC that all of the attacks happened at night, but it was difficult to pinpoint the reason. There are several speculations going around. There is talk of witchcraft, but perhaps the animals ran short of food, he said. Hyenas are dog-like animals which hunt at night in packs and often act as scavengers. Environmentalists say damage to their habitat in countries like Malawi has been pushing them to live near villages. Mr. Lavuza said that could explain the animals' unusual behavior. The area is very hilly, but the mountain cover is not all good. So perhaps some animals have run out of their natural habitat and decided to go into villages to foray for food and attack people crossing their path. But local people have their own ideas of what may lie behind the attacks. Some superstitious villages believe a man-eating hyena were kept and fed by humans who used them to send them out on a clandestine magical mission. After their keeper's death, the hyena became hungry and, because they were reared by humans, began attacking people rather than animals. Traditional beliefs in the Malawi hold that people can use witchcraft to change themselves into hyenas and terrorize and kill their enemies. The government has dismissed these stories. However, Vice President Justin Malwezi was sent to the area last weekend to investigate. The government is taking action and is bringing in rangers to track down the hyenas and kill them, Anthony Lavuza said, adding that people's safety is paramount. Since the attacks began around Christmas, people in the affected area have been afraid to venture outside after dark. In most rural areas in Malawi, Families prefer to sleep outside to guard their crops and keep cool during the sweltering summer heat. But in areas where hyena attacks have been reported, villages are now deserted after sunset. So, what I did in that upload was I combined some news articles and some of the African stories and lore. And by doing that, what I did essentially was make sense. These people, not the government, but these people who live in these poor villages, they know what's going on. They know what's attacking. The government's blaming hyena, but they know. The one guy, this is not a hyena. It's much too large. It's a were hyena, which in my perception of it, I think is a hyena like dogman. To me, today's upload is pretty much saying, hey, not only does America, the United States, do this and cover up the gruesome attacks and lie about the animals, but so does in other countries, other continents at that. Even impoverished little communities lie. These things are out there and they're hungry. Well, in Africa, they're hungry, or they just seem to like to just mess with people, which, ironically enough, is what the dogman does in the States. I really think that, to me, my theory is the were hyena is just a hyena-like dogman. Very aggressive, very strong. They made mention of the glowing red eyes. I mean, if nothing out of what I just shared with you makes sense, a couple of things should. The lies of the government, the people saying we know, and the descriptions. I mean, they're saying this looks like a hyena, but it's far too big. The back legs are too long for a spotted hyena. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't have the same gait. Just can't get out of my head the red eye thing. So, I don't know. Hopefully they get to the bottom of it. So, with that, I want to bid you all farewell. I want to thank you all for all of your support. And please be kind to each other. And may the Great Spirit watch over all of us and guide us on our path of life. Farewell, my friends.